Good afternoon, and welcome to K2's Road to Excellence Part 15 and our partner Xero. This is Alan Salmon, and I hope that you've recovered from Thanksgiving yesterday. We've got an interesting hour for you, but before we get into it, I need to do a little bit of admin work. Marilyn Benninger is backing me up today as usual, and she is your go-to person for technical issues and for questions. Your microphones are muted for obvious reasons. You're welcome to take notes, but Marilyn, within 10 days of today, will be sending you a package of material that will include a recording of this webinar, my teaching notes, my teaching files, the answers to any of the questions you ask, and your CPD certificates. So questions get asked in the chat window. At the end of the webinar, Marilyn sends us the questions, we answer them, and they're included in your package. In terms of CPD certificates, if you're new to our webinars, 4 times today, Marilyn is going to be stopping us and putting up a polling question. It's a multiple choice. You don't have to get the answer right, but you do have to select an answer and click on submit, because you need to be recorded as submitting 3 of the 4 questions. That's at least 3 of the 4 questions to receive your 1 hour of verifiable. If you don't, it'll be 1 hour of non-verifiable. Before we get on, I want to touch on 2 things. Number 1, Marilyn has been on the road with our accounting technology seminar series for the past 2 weeks, and this is catch-up week for her. For those of you who have been waiting for the October 1st package, it should go out any day now. Secondly, in the October 1st seminar, when I looked at the questions, most of them were because I failed to show you exactly where to get things like flash fill, fuzzy lookup, inquire, and quick analysis. And I apologize for that. In your package and in the notes is extensive information on how to do those things. So without further ado, I want to get started. And today's session for me is what I call analysis. And there are 5 tools in Excel that assist with doing that analysis. So before we get started, Marilyn, it's time for the first poll to find out where people are at.
Good morning or good afternoon, folks. Your screen should now be blue, and we're asking you a quick poll. Have you used any of these Excel tools? You can select all that apply. That might be Watch Window, Goal Seek, Scenario Manager, Solver, or none of the above, in which case you're in exactly the right room for learning today. We like to close our polls at 90%, and we're just right there. Thanks for your quick responses. I will count you down to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm closing the poll now and sharing the results with you, Alan.
Wow. It looks like I've got some work to do today, so let's dive in. One of the issues when we're working with large spreadsheets is trying to find data when things happen. So if you look at the spreadsheet on my screen, it's just a consolidated budget for out of date 2015, but it works for this. And one of the key things is when I go down here, right there, that's a key number that I want to keep in mind, because when I'm playing with the budgets, let's say I'm playing with the November budget and I change this to 6,000, I want to be able to see what happens down here. But if I'm up here, I can't see at the bottom of the screen. So the solution to that is what's called the watch window. And it's under the Formula tab over here. And you notice this panel up here has opened up. I'm going to follow my nose. I'm going to add a watch. And it wants to know what I want to watch. Well, I want to watch this. And I click on Add. Notice what I've got here now as I widen this. So the first thing it tells me is what's the name of the file, watchwindow.xls. What sheet am I on? What cell am I looking at? What's the current value and what's the formula there? So if I go to November and I type in 2,500, when I hit enter, watch this number right here change. There we go. And there's no limit to the number of watches that you can do. Now, one of the disadvantages of the watch window is it takes up real estate. Well, that's not a problem. I just click on the X here and I'm back working. So I make a change down here and we'll make that 1,500. And what was the impact of that? Well, we just go over here to the watch window and there it is. Let's do this again, but let's do it on a different workbook. And that's this one. And I've already got a watch in there, so I'm going to delete it. And I go up here and I click here. Now, this is a large spreadsheet when it comes to data and to number of sheets. Well, not the number of sheets. But as I work on this, there's some key numbers that I want to see. So I'm going to go to the financial statement workbook or worksheet. And I'm working now in 2019. And the key number here that I want to see is not cash flow, but net income after tax for 2020. So what do? I go to the Formula tab, I go to the watch window, and I come down here and I click on net income after tax. Well, I need to add the watch first. There we go. Now there's another number that I might want to see. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to track on what happens to my income statement when I change, say, that number. What do? Add the watch, and there we go. So now I'm working in the financial statements and I'm working up here and I'm going to add a number here. So let's make this really, really large, 5 million. And I hit enter. And notice my watch window's up to date. So that's a tool that I use on a regular basis when I'm working with data like this. The next thing that I want to cover is what's called goal seek. Now, traditionally, when we all build spreadsheets, and I don't need the watch window, we would put in required sales, anticipated profit percentage, and a formula here that says multiply required sales times the anticipated gross profit. Goal seek works the other way, where you put in your target and you roll it backwards to understand what you'll need. Now, you can do it manually. I've done it many times. All you do is go in and play with the numbers. But with goal seek, watch what happens. That's in the data menu over here, what if analysis and goal seek. And Excel wants three numbers. What's the set cell? It's that. What are we going to set it to? Well, I want a gross profit of $6 million. There we go. And what cell am I going to change? That one. Now, watch these numbers change as I click on OK. Done. So to generate a net profit or a gross profit of $6 million, I need sales of that. And of course, I can play what if with goal seek. So let's do another one right here. So here's my budget. In the winter, I've got that. And I've got that. And let's assume that my net profit goal is $45,000. So the question is, what revenue do I need in the fall to get $45,000 net profit? Well, we do this exactly the same. We go to data, we go to what if analysis, and we go to goal seek. So what's my set cell? That. What do I want it to be? Well, we'll make it 50,000 just to be there. And which cell am I going to change? That one. Watch the screen roll. Wow. I'm going to assume that many of you will find goal seek to be very useful. But that's only playing with one variable. I'm changing this to get this. What if we have more than one variable? Well, then we go to a tool called Scenario Manager. So notice what I've got. I've got sales, price per unit, fixed cost, variable cost per unit. And I want to play what if. I want to vary sale quantity, price per unit, and variable cost per unit. And I want to produce three scenarios: a worst case, a best case, and a probable case. So how do we do that? We go again to data what if analysis, and we go to the scenario manager. Now, I was practicing this morning, as I always do, so I've got three cases in there. All right, let's start with no cases. And I'll go to add. And I'm going to call this worst case. Now, what cells am I going to change? Well, not A1. I'm going to change B1 and B2 and B5. Now to get B5 into here, I hold down the control key. So there we go. I want to play with B2, B3, and B5. I click on OK. All right. So let's change this to 75. Let's change this to 50. And let's change this to 30. So there's what I think is the worst case mix. When I click on OK, I get another window. But down here, notice Show. When I click on Show, I want you to look at those numbers, and they're going to change. So I'm going to show a profit of $1,300. Well, let's add a case. And let's call it probable. And notice it's retained that, so all I need to do is click on OK. All right, I think we're going to sell 100 of those. 60 of those. I mean, price per unit is 60, and we'll go to 35 on our variable cost. Click on OK. Watch it change. When I click on probable, show. Let's do a best case. Click on OK. This time we're going to get 125. Price per unit is going to go up to 70. And our variable cost per unit is going to come down to 25. Click on OK. Click on Show. Wow. Now the problem with these is that I've got to go here, click on worst case, and so on. But watch what happens if I click on the summary tab right here. Wants to know where the results are right there. And watch the new sheet that comes up when I click on OK. Well, that's kind of cool. Here's the summary. There's the current values. There's the worst case. There's the probable case and the best case. And if I'm going to play what if, I'll then go back into the individual cases and play with those, and it'll automatically update my summary. So when I'm doing complex budgeting, I'll often use the scenario summary. Next, I have a present for you, and that is in your package, you are going to get a file called Breakeven Analysis. Now, I've already done this. This is for something for you to open and play with if you think of it. And I'm often doing a break-even analysis, and we can do it in various ways. So here's my first example. I've got a fixed cost of the product is $1,000 and my margin is $10. What's the break-even point? Well, the break-even point is units equals fixed cost divided by the contribution margin per unit. And when I do that, my break-even is 10. Here's another example. Fixed cost of 50,000, variable cost 200, selling price is 400. What's the break-even point? This time it's fixed costs divided by sales price per unit minus the variable cost per unit. There we go. Example 3. Break even is 500, sale price per unit is 100. Break even is sales price per unit times the break even point in units, 50,000. Sale, 100,000. Contribution margin, 200. Value of the break even point is 200. Now let's calculate the number of units to produce the desired product. 100,000, 200, and so on. And the break even this time is the number of units that we want to produce is equal to bracket the desired profit in dollars divided by the contribution per unit plus the break even point. And here's another example. I won't take the time to go through it, but again, I'm doing some variables. So if this file is useful for you and you want to use it as an example for doing break-even analysis, it's yours to enjoy. And the final point that I want to cover today is another tool called Solver. Now, Solver on my screen is over here. On your screen, you won't have it. So I'm going to take the time to show you how you get Solver. Shouldn't surprise you that we're going to File, we're going to Options, and we're going to go down here to Add-ins. And you'll notice that I have the Solver add-in here. So how did I get it? Well, I'm going to go down here to COM add-ins and click on Go. And I'll get a bunch of add-ins. And by the way, for those of you that were looking for fuzzy lookup, that's how you would get it. You just click on it. The same thing with Inquire. But with Inquire, you've got to download an executable. But if we go down farther, it's not there. Well, that's because I went to COM add-ins. Let's do it again. Options, add-ins, and let's go with Excel add-ins. And there we go. So all you're going to do is go to add-ins, click on Solver, and it's there. Now, I don't use Solver very often, partly because I really don't need it, but it's a really cool tool when you have variables and you have restraints. So in this example, I have 3 tasks: Task A, Task B, and Task C. The maximum number I have available for Task A is 450. For Task B, it's 475. For Task C, it's 500. Now the billing rate's straightforward. It's not going to change. My marginal costs are that, gross profit. Now here's the restraints. I obviously can't exceed the maximum number of that are available for Task A, B, and C. I must sell 50 of each. So the goal here is to maximize gross profit. What's the best mix that will generate a gross profit? So I'm going to go to Solver. And I get this window. Now, I've already populated this in the interest of time. So I'm going to move it over here. Okay. So I want to change the values from B6 to D6. In other words, I want to do that. Now here's the restraints. B6 has to be less than B2, obviously, and the same thing for C. So that's the first three restraints. F6 has to be less than F2. In other words, the total sold can't exceed 750. D6 has to be less than D2, and D6 has to be greater than 50. And I got my restraints. So I'm merely going to click on solve. And it's working away. And when I bring this window down, notice what we've got. Solver found a solution. All constraints and optimality conditions are satisfied. I can do restore or I can keep it. I want to keep it. So there we go. To maximize the profit of $139,375 with the restraints, we need to sell 225 of task A, 475 of task B, and 50 of task C. How long would it take you to come up with that with trial and error? So there's my session for this morning. So Marilyn, it's time for my last poll.
Awesome information as always, Alan. So folks, this is our second of 4 polls. We're asking, when you insert in an Excel range into a Word document, do you have problems getting it to scale properly? Do you use simple paste to get the range into Word? Do you use special paste to get the range into Word? Do you use special paste link to insert the range? Or maybe none of the above. And I suspect Alan's asking because we're having a future session on this. We're nearly at 90%, folks. Thanks for your quick responses. I'm going to count you down to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm closing the poll and sharing those results.
That's exactly what I expected. And you're absolutely right, Marilyn. That's the session that I'm going to do in 2 weeks. So it's time now to do a handoff to our friends at Xero. So let's bring Teddy into the webinar.
All right, Teddy, you'll need to unmute yourself, please.
There we go. Can everybody hear me okay?
You're coming in loud and clear. You have the comm.
Very good. So yeah, I've got about half an hour here. So I was going to spend the first 5 to 7 minutes going through a little presentation, and then I'm going to get into a little bit of a demo. So this will be somewhat similar to last month's presentation. For those that tuned in, hopefully the audio and visuals tie together a little bit better than last time. So yeah, excited to be presenting today, and thank you to Alan and the team for giving us the opportunity to be a part of the webinar series here. So here's a picture of myself with one of my coworkers there, Avi Dutt, one of the partner consultants on the team. So I've been with Xero for just over 3 years, and one of my claims to fame is I was the first person on the Canadian team to cross the border into Canada. So that was in July of 2017, and we officially launched the team in January of the following year. And the team has now grown to over 35, and we recently joined offices with HubDoc. So really the team is exploding and growing, and it's really exciting to be a part of. So what is Xero? Xero is beautiful accounting software, and in a couple of slides I'm going to talk a bit about the Xero platform. And we were originally created with a design focus, meaning that we wanted Xero to be aesthetically beautiful for business users and accountants alike. And so that has always been one of our top priorities. And one of our co-founders, or one of the original people on the team, was our current Chief Technology Officer. His name is Craig Walker, and he was recruited to help design the Xero website, as he was well known for making beautiful websites. So that is a little background on why we use the word beautiful so often when describing our software. When we look at subscriber growth, these numbers are as of 3/31, our last public release date. So we have an earnings call in early November, so these numbers will be increased. But as you can see here, Xero is a global leader in this, and outside of the US, we are the global leader for cloud accounting. So we are scaling, and while we might be somewhat new to Canada in the last couple of years, we're certainly not new to the accounting and bookkeeping game around the world. So you're in good hands. So Xero's purpose: we are focused on making the lives for small businesses, their advisors, and communities around the world better. So the wording has slightly changed on some of this stuff, but ultimately what it comes down to is we were founded to make the communication between a small business owner and his or her accountant or bookkeeper smoother and more efficient. One of our end goals is what we call code-free accounting, and trying to empower accountants and bookkeepers to be having higher value conversations with their clients rather than chasing paperwork. So why use Xero? So I was mentioning some of the paperwork that you might be have an easier time getting your hands on, and that all comes back to connectivity. And that's the one that I always focus on in this slide. Is a lot of advisors will mention that they're a lot closer with their clients now than they used to be, and that has a lot to do with the fact that they're having more fruitful conversations rather than trying to chase down last month's bank statement. So for those of you that had the opportunity to attend one of the Xero roadshows this month, half of them have already happened and half of them are still coming in the next month. But I have a 30-minute speaking session talking about the Xero platform. And really, I think a good comparison here is maybe the iPhone. And when you think about the iPhone coming out in 2007, it was pretty much a camera and a phone all in one, right? And over time, the capabilities of that phone, there's now over 2 million different apps or softwares that you can integrate with an iPhone. And in Xero, our marketplace, we have over 700 different softwares that you can integrate with Xero. So starting to understand that while, we're very well known as one of the best or the best bookkeeping solutions for small businesses in the world, we really do provide a lot more. And that has a lot to do with the ability to integrate with other softwares. And in this slide, I'm focused on those applications on the bottom, but a big piece of it too are those practice tools. So the ability to do working papers inside of Xero. We have Xero Practice Manager as well, report templates that you can start to leverage. So some tools for the firm, as well as a lot of opportunity to innovate and create better workflows within softwares that integrate cleanly with Xero. So it's definitely a big shift in the industry, but it's an exciting one for those that are out in front of it. So last year in August, we purchased HubDoc for, I believe, 93 million Canadian dollars, largest acquisition to date for Xero, and huge show of huge commitment to the Canadian market, as HubDoc was founded right here in Toronto, where I'm sitting today. So we joined offices with them last Monday. So we're in a space with room for 250, and that includes all 100 HubDocs. So very exciting time, as we've recently switched into this much larger and exclusively Xero/HubDoc office. I really like this slide because at the end of the day, Xero empowers accountants and small businesses to be better off by connecting them as often as we can. So you can see in the middle there that 90% of our customers are connected with an accountant or bookkeeper. We really want that number to be 100%. And we know that all else equal, small businesses have a 50-50 shot of surviving to their 5th birthday. But if they're connected with a Xero advisor, an accountant or bookkeeper, the chances of seeing their 5th birthday goes up to 85%. So there's some nice statistics on this slide about increased revenue for small businesses leveraging cloud, and increased revenues for firms that are leveraging cloud. At the end of the day, this is about making life better for small businesses, and ultimately that comes back to helping them survive and thrive. So this is why I personally love working at Xero. So ultimately, anything that can be automated will be. So this is something that's very exciting for small business owners. It can be scary to accountants and bookkeepers, but I honestly see this as a huge opportunity for those that are learning and that are out in front of this and starting to adapt. Currently, about 10% of small businesses in Canada are online, 10 to 11%, and 60% want to be online in, say, 5 years, 5-6 years. So that's a huge shift. And so, yeah, I guess the question to ask yourself is, are you ready to help half of your clients make that transition? And if not, hopefully we can get connected and try to help progress you and feel more confident having some of those conversations with clients. So I'm going to get into my demo now, but if you have any questions, please give Alan the feedback in the form and I will get it. And I'm happy to follow up and we can set up a demo or further conversation if you have more questions. But yeah, without further ado, I'm going to jump into my demo.
Hey, Teddy, maybe we should take a moment and ask your first polling question.
Great idea. So yeah, I will let you take that, Marilyn.
Thank you. So folks, we're just trying to get a sense of who's in the room today. Do you have any clients that are using Xero? Pretty simple choices. Yes, no, maybe you're not certain, and maybe it's not applicable to you in today's webinar, but we're glad that you're here and actively seeking your learning. We're already at 90%, so I'm going to count you down from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to close the poll. And the results show 4% of folks on the call today, Teddy, have a client. 41% said no. There's a few, around 6% that weren't sure. And there's a few today that aren't applicable. I'm going to let you get back to your presentation.
Thank you, Marilyn. Appreciate that. So I've logged into the Xero Demo company, and so I'm going to quickly navigate to what we call Xero HQ. So Xero HQ is essentially the accountant and bookkeeper version of Xero. You can keep track of your practice or your firm. So the activity tab can start to give you notifications if you have, or if your employees have work to be done within individual businesses, perhaps a certain number of days since the last reconciliation or a certain number of unreconciled transactions. You can also integrate 11 key applications into this feed. So you could integrate HubDoc, you could integrate Receipt Bank, you could integrate Practice Ignition, Fathom, Spotlight reporting. There's a few other applications as well, but again, just trying to create some further integrations and opportunities for you to see where you need to jump in and do work. The Clients tab, this is where you're going to organize your clients on Xero. You can also add clients not on Xero. This is a light CRM. You could log some notes from a call or some basic information about the client. So, and you'll see why that might be valuable on the Ask tab in a second. The Explorer tab here, this is where you're going to be able to tag the industry your clients are in, and you're also going to see what other softwares your clients have connected to Xero. So this is a good one. If you see an app pop up here that you're not familiar with, maybe your client has connected it and you should ask them a few questions, as there might be some opportunity for you to leverage that information. You can also tag the industries your clients are in, and that's really helpful because this is where our advisor directory pulls that information. So if somebody in Toronto who is in the real estate industry is looking for an accountant, and you have a bunch of clients in Toronto that are in the real estate industry, our advisor directory will promote you higher than someone who doesn't have clients in the real estate industry. So happy to dive into that with anyone individually at a future time, but that's the gist of that tab. The Reports tab, this is where you can create templates. You can see here Xero has created some templates, but there's some notice to reader templates that Xero's created. I've created some of my own. This is really great for management reporting as well. So monthly or quarterly reporting that is repetitive, as this allows you to roll those reports forward really easily. I will touch on that really briefly during my demo as well, as I will show you an example of one. The next tab here relates to the Ask tab. So I mentioned this before, but this is where you could send out a questionnaire to your clients. So you could send an email to your clients with a link with all of your questions for either a month-end document request list, a quarter-end document request list, or a year-end document request list. And it's really helpful because rather than getting responses in individual emails from the clients and also getting it to one person's inbox, you're able to get it into a place where multiple people on the team would have access to it. And so if someone's out on vacation, you'll have access to their email, it doesn't stop the work. It also stops those constant emails from flowing in, so it can be really helpful on that. So staff, this is where you invite your staff in, give them the access to the clients that they need access to. And then the practice tab here is where you can see how many partner points you have. You can also quickly get to the certification in Xero, and you also have access to a demo company. So I could reset the demo company, but I did it before the demo, so I'm gonna actually just X out of this tab, and my other tab that's open here is my demo company. So let's jump in there and see what we've got. So this is the dashboard in Xero. A lot of what I'm gonna talk about today is very focused on the perspective of the accountant or bookkeeper, whereas this tab is very much for your clients or for the small business owner. So this is totally customizable at the bottom. I can edit this dashboard. Perhaps if this client needs for bills to show up at the top because they don't pay their bills, I can put that up top. The account watch list is a really nice one too. I really like putting HST payable as one of my accounts on here, so there's no surprises at the end of the quarter when my client has an HST bill for $5,000. But yeah, totally customizable, can hide accounts that we don't use and bring to the top the ones that we want to draw their attention to. But if I jump into the reconcile functionality here, let's take a look at how Xero deals with reconciliation. So I'm gonna X out some of these videos that pop up at the top, but if you're going through Xero for the first time, these can be helpful, just so you get a basic understanding of what each screen does. So the way this screen works is on the left-hand side, we have the transactions that are coming straight in from our bank feed if we have set that up, or if we are importing our bank statements, then this is where they will show up as well. So either directly importing, the information will come right here. And on the right-hand side, we have Xero getting to work. So the green match implies that I've already created this transaction in the system. Xero is smart enough to know that it's the same transaction, so I'm able to reconcile that item off the bank statement and reconcile my receivable from Ridgeway University, all with one click of a button. For this second one, I know that I created some invoices for Smart Agency, so I can really quickly come in here and search for them. And yep, sure enough, this payment relates to 2 bills that we owed Smart Agency. I can very quickly mark those payables as paid and reconcile that transaction off of my bank statement. This transaction, again, I know that there's something in the system for city limousines, but none of them are for $100. So I'm going to do a partial payment against the oldest invoice I can find and knock that down from $250 owed to $150 owed. I click the split button and the OK button, and that is dealt with. We have another smart match here, as this is a bill I've already created, so I can click OK. We've got an advance here, it looks like. So if we click on Add Details, we can create a prepayment in the system so that it appropriately goes in as a liability. So we go prepayment, we can choose an account here. How about unearned revenue? All right, it's not in there, but otherwise I might send it to unearned revenue, but for purposes of the demo, let's go to the prepayments account and click Save Transaction, and we can click OK to reconcile it. So that's dealt with. This transaction here, this is automation getting to work. So Xero recognizes that I have coded transactions that look like this in the past a certain way, and it's suggesting how you might code it. If we've done some bad coding in the past, we might want to turn that off. We can click that at the bottom and it will no longer suggest some coding. I'm going to show you a different page that I like to deal with those transactions, but you can certainly click OK. And if your clients are doing a lot of the reconciliation, they can come through and click OK on those. So here's a bank rule being applied. I'm going to spend a little time on the next screen on bank rules, so I'm not going to click OK, but I could and thus book that transaction. One more smart payment here. We'll click OK, and once we go through here, we've dealt with the smart payments. This cash coding tab is really a gem of Xero when it comes to reconciliation. So if you have a client who comes to you at the end of the year, again, what I just did there was filter this sheet under the payee column. You can filter it for any of the columns. But this is great for catch-up work, the ability to look at a lot of transactions and code them really fast. So we can see a rule has been applied for those top 2 transactions, but what I'm going to do is create another rule for these parking transactions. And since I created the rule by selecting one of the transactions, Xero is going to start to guess how to create the rule. So I'm going to do a few tweaks here and make sure it captures some other transactions that I saw there that related to some parking. But you can see here, you can do all or any. You have a lot of options on which column to focus on. And then you also can say equals, contains, starts with, or is blank. And I'm going to do contains park. I could create one contact for all transactions, even if they related. Maybe I just wanted one parking contact rather than having each garage I park at. But for this one, I'm going to say, I'm going to simplify it for purpose of the demo. And down here, I can send this line 3 that I skipped over. This is for when you have a fixed amount and then a variable amount. So this can relate to a loan. Perhaps 1,000 of the payment every month goes to principal and the remainder goes to interest, depending on how many days are in the month. But there's several situations where that can be a useful line. But for purposes of this one, I'm going to send the whole thing to motor vehicle expenses. But as far as this adding up to 100%, you can manipulate this however you want. So you could add 6 different accounts here by adding new lines. And as long as it adds up to 100%, you can do a lot of cool things. So one thing some people like to do are gross up sales for something like Stripe. And again, as long as it adds up to 100, it works. So again, for this one, I'm going to leave this at 100, but a lot of flexibility when it comes to creating these allocations. So I'm going to leave the reference there. We can target one bank account or all bank accounts. I'm going to target this one bank account, and I'm going to actually change the rule to parking, and I'm going to add the account number to the rule title as well, just so it's right in my face. And when I click save here, we're going to see that rule starts to get applied to all of the parking transactions. So the first time you leverage this screen, it's really good to spend a bit of time creating these bank rules, as it will really create efficiencies for you in the future. So when you come in here, you can kind of one over the transactions and then click save and reconcile. And anything that has a rule applied, anything that has the coding filled out is going to get reconciled. So 9 transactions in just a couple of seconds. And once I show you one thing, I'm going to show you that you can actually code the rest of these in just a couple of seconds. But before I do that, I want to show a really great way to communicate the transactions you need to ask your clients about. So if I go to the bank account screen, and I'm going to open this in a new tab using my right click. And from here, there is this uncoded statement lines report. This is a gem. So if you come in here, and I'm going to expand the date to October so that it has some transactions, and I'm going to export that to PDF. And the reason I'm exporting it to PDF is just to show you that this is an editable PDF. So you can really easily send this to your client, and they can see what the transactions you have questions about are, and they can come in here and give you the answers that you need. And then they can send this back to you, or worst case, you call them and walk them through it, and they at least know what you're asking about. So much better than copy and pasting that into an email or into a spreadsheet, just a cleaner look for both you and for your client. And also a really nice clean audit trail of their responses to justify the coding that you do. So yeah, a very nice one there. But if I go back to my cash coding screen, I want to purposefully throw the rest of these to the wrong accounts. So this is why we probably aren't going to give our clients access to this screen, as they might do something like this. Send everything to general expenses. So again, a really powerful tool to get through a lot of work in a short amount of time, but definitely something you probably want to be restrictive with when it comes to giving clients access. But there is good news, as there is an easy way to clean this up. So if I go to my accounting advanced screen and the find and recode functionality at the top here, this is a great way to clean up client mistakes or even just change the treatment of accounts. But we have a lot of different ways to search for transactions. So we're essentially searching through all transactions in the system here. But one of my favorites is entered by here. I like to keep an eye on the work Teddy's doing. He's fast and loose with his coding. And I know what account he sends stuff to. He always dumps stuff to general expenses, so I can really easily find it with like that. And we can see the 14 transactions he sent there. And we can really quickly select all of them. We can sort these and exclude one or two if we don't want to include the Bayside Club transaction. We don't have to. But for the rest of them, we're going to recode them. We could change the contact, the account code, which is what we're going to change, and we're going to send it to rent, even though it doesn't make too much sense. Just for purposes of the demo, we can change the tax rate when the client sends everything to doesn't divide by 2 for their meals and entertainment. You can search for everything in the meals and entertainment and recode all of the taxes in one fell swoop. And then this add button, this relates to our region, which would be our version of classes. We call it tracking categories. And so if you've set those up, you can really easily allocate a lot of transactions to a certain tracking category. So we're going to see how quick it is as far as recoding the 13 transactions. You can recode up to 2,000 transactions at once. So another powerful tool that you're very unlikely to give your clients access to. But one of the real nice things here is how clean of an audit trail we have. So at the bottom of every transaction in Xero, we have this history and notes section. So if I expand this, we can see all of the transactional activity. We can see who did it, we can see when they did it, and we can even see how they coded it before. So we can see the original coding of the transaction before it was recoded. So a really clean audit trail for all transactions in Xero. So I'm going to X this out, and what I'm going to show now are reports. So if I go to reports here, I'm going to really quickly show an example of an income statement and how easy that is to manipulate. So if I go into the P&L here, I can start to make changes. So if I click on report settings here, I can add previous periods really easily. I can change this to a quarterly statement really easily as well. But if we come down the bottom here, that looks good to me, but I've got some more customizations I want to make. So I want this to say income statement, and I want to change some of the groupings here. So if I click on edit, it's very simple. So what we're looking at here is all of the accounts in my chart of accounts. So it's very easy to drag and drop those and move them around as I see fit. It's also really easy to create groups. So if I hold the control key or the command key, if I'm using an Apple, we can really easily select some accounts and dump them into a group. So I'm going to call this G&A. And we can leave that as a subtotal, or we can collapse it as a group if we want to bury the accounts that are rolling into it. I'm going to show it as a subtotal just so we can see what that looks like. But before I finalize this report, I'm going to add a few columns as well. So at the top here, we have a lot of options. We can add text, pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to delete that though. We can add a schedule. So if I did collapse a number of accounts, I could show a breakout. This is really nice too if I want to show some balance sheet accounts at the bottom of an income statement or something like that. It's a really helpful way to do that. I can add a footer, pretty self-explanatory. Rows, I can add groups. I like to select the accounts and using control. I think that's a better way to do the groups, but you can also do it here if you want to, or you could add a formula as well. I'm going to add a formula as a column though, and so that's going to be the first thing I do here. So I'm just going to create a simple variance. So I'm going to do current minus previous, and I'm just going to call this variance. So just a real simple quarter over quarter comparison. And I'm also going to add one more column here. So again, I could add an additional date, I could add some notes, but what I want to add is a percentage. So what I want is the current period as a percentage of trading income. And I can call that whatever I want. Just to make it a little shorter, percentage of income, how about that? But if I click done here, let's take a look at the report we've created. So if I scroll down and take a look, we can see all of the customizations I made are all in there. And if I want to recreate this report in the future, I can save as a custom report. I could make this my default P&L by clicking this button, but I'm not going to do that. And I'm just going to call this my percentage of income version of my profit and loss so that I can recreate it really easily. And if I go back to the reports section using the breadcrumb, I can see that this custom report now shows up, and I can star it so it shows up on my dropdown. So I just have 1 minute left here, so I want to really quickly just take a look at those. I just want to briefly touch on how the report templates work. So the editor that I was just looking at within the profit and loss, I mentioned that those were your chart of accounts. But if you were setting up a template, what you'd be looking at is the same exact report editor, but you'd be looking at report codes. So that way you can use those templates across any chart of accounts, across all of your clients, by mapping the chart of accounts to those report codes. But the same flexibility to create additional columns and formulas as you just saw within that individual client. So you can imagine that could be very easily a 1 hour demo, and that's typically how long we allot to report template demos. But if you're curious and you want to see more, please do leave it in the comments section here, and I'd be excited to set up a time in the next week or two to connect and show you how that works. But yeah, the last thing I did want to plug is just the roadshow that we have coming up. So this week we're in London, Ontario. So if anyone's in that area, would love to have you. Next week we're in Ottawa, Halifax, and Montreal. And on the 30th of this month, we will be in Toronto at the Glenn Gould Studio. So very excited for those events where we'll be making some announcements, and we'll start to take a look at what we're doing on the product side as well as doing a product workflow. But yeah, we have about 1 minute here, so I'll kick it to you, Marilyn, to do our last question. And yeah, I hope this was helpful, and please do let me know if you have additional questions. Be excited to follow up.
Thanks, Teddy. So
Yeah.
folks, while I have the last poll up, Teddy, where can people find out the dates and locations for the roadshow? Is that on your website?
Yeah, so it would be xero.com/roadshows.
Okay, perfect.
So /roadshow. So xero.com.ca or /CA/roadshow. That's where all the information is, because I did neglect a few of the West Coast roadshows. I think the Vancouver roadshow is tomorrow, and Victoria is on Friday the 18th. So this week we have, yeah, Vancouver tomorrow, London Thursday, Victoria Friday. So I did neglect them. Sorry about that.
Busy times. All right, folks, you're already at 90%. Thanks for your quick responses. I'm counting you down from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And our results show reconciliation, leader in the clubhouse. Yay! Reporting, followed by templating and collaborating with clients. Great stuff. There are some of the roadshow dates there, folks, and you can always go to the xero.com/CA website for more details. All right, Al, I'm going to change you back to our presenter.
You should be seeing my screen now. So thank you, Teddy. It's always interesting to see new products and services that come into Canada. Thank you to our attendees. And before you leave, if you want additional information, for example, we have an advanced Excel Power Query. It's a paid course, and you'll get the link to that when you get your package. On another note, accessing and cleaning data is another advanced course. And again, you'll get the link. So I want to wrap up by saying thank you to all of you, and hopefully I'll see all of you in 2 weeks. It's a wrap.